Welcome on board. It was so heartening to see all your responses for the internship. So, before we actually begin the session today, let's learn about what you have actually signed up for. So, before we are proceeding further, let's take this opportunity to tell that you have been provided to improve or hone your writing skills. Each of the interns will write one article on different category every month up to 3 months. The topic related to the particular category and guidelines regarding them have already been shared with you all, and all the interns will write one article in each category to have the complete understanding of content writing field in the professional world. Now, there were 10 different categories that were provided to you. The first was scientific writing or how to articles. The second was writing a book review. Third was news article writing or the press release. Fourth is the product description. Fifth is organizational review. It's like writing about your college or any organization that you feel like. Sixth is blogging. So blogging includes all the variety of topics, be it health, diet, technology, travel, parenting, trips, etc. Seventh is search engine optimization, writing with keywords. Eighth topic would be creative writing. That is your story writing, poems, critics writing, anything. Ninth is success stories. You can share success stories of any particular individual that you are inspired from. And 10th is the biography. So these are the 10 topics that interns need to write one article each on. Today we have so many mentors like Bhupesh Vaidya, Divya Thakur, Harshvardhan Vyas, and I'll be there to help the interns out. Today in this session we have Mr. Bhupesh Vaidya with us. He is a PhD scholar at National Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, Mohali, Punjab, working in the field of pharmacology. He has already published 5 research review articles in reputed international peer-reviewed journals. In addition to it, he has written several grant applications for seeking funding for brain-related disorders. His work has been appreciated and awarded at several national conferences and scientific bodies such as the Society of Toxicology and Society of Young Biomedical Scientists in India. His passions also include writing poems and short quotes, which he pursues as a hobby. So now I invite him to enlighten the interns, and to the interns, I'll say that later you all can clarify your queries regarding the academic writing, and he'll help to answer them all. So, Mr. Mehdi, please continue forward.
Thank you, Mani, for such a lovely introduction. So today we will be talking in brief about the content writing, and I am very glad to be here on and by Monomousumi to be given this opportunity to talk today about academic writing and some other aspects related to content writing. I hope that I'll be able to answer your queries, and if you have any doubts, feel free to ask me anytime in between. And yeah, so I'll try that this session is interactive and we can take up doubts in between as well, and in the end as well, whatever is feasible with everyone. So I'll be sharing a presentation. Just give me a second. Mubani, I'll just need access to for the screen sharing.
Just a second. Okay, it's
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, is my screen visible?
yes, your screen is visible.
Yeah, so I'm so glad that there are so many people here who are taking up this internship, and Monomousumi always provides us with initiatives which have a really good thoughtful ideas behind them. So in this internship, you as it has already been mentioned that you will be learning about different type of articles, and you're learning in total about the content writing. So what content writing basically is, uh, so to begin with, if you see this slide, and you can see that there are two aspects which have been highlighted in two different ways. A single aspect has been highlighted in two different ways. On the right you will see people, and someone has explained how the diabetes progresses, what are the symptoms of diabetes, and same thing has been highlighted in text on the left, while it is in the form of images on the right. So same goes with content writing. You can express your thoughts, your views in different forms, but it should be catchy. It should be appealing to the readers. Otherwise, you're not going to get any viewers, and you will not be able to reach to a larger audience. So by looking at this slide, it would be it would be better if someone expresses it with some pictorial representations or diagrams or certain other aspects which appeal more in comparison to the simple text. And I'm sure that by now you must be knowing that content writing is beyond horizons, and there are a number of fields where one can go after being a content writer, be it a part of a business story, or be it academia where people need scientific writers, medical writers, be it industry where people need someone to communicate their findings to the common public, to the research community, to maybe the regulators who or the drug policy makers, such as people in the government, or like everyone. So content writer is someone who is required in every field, and more importantly, he is the one who makes the content accessible to the general public or to his fellow mates. It is very important that one follows certain guidelines, or one follows a particular form of formal or informal sort of writing, depending on what kind of content you are writing. For example, if someone is writing a grant application, or say an academic article, one has to be formal. While if someone is appealing the audience which is uh, which is not which does not belong to a scientific community, and is the common public who reads blogs or say newspaper articles, in that case one has to employ a correct hybrid of informal and formal style of writing, so that it's not very complicated. Otherwise people will stop after reading a few lines, and it has to be eye catchy, so that your content can grab people's attention. uh, Said that, I'll be focusing more on academic writing. As Mobani already pointed out, I'm working in the field of research related to brain related disorders. So I'll be talking more about that. So when it comes to academic writing, there are a number of different types of academic writings, or scientific publications, such as oral presentations, written presentations, book or book chapters. I know you would be learning how to write book reviews in this internship, so that is going to be helpful. Then review papers, where people learn about where people do literature search, and on this basis they make perspectives, they communicate commentaries and things like that. And then obviously there are journal articles. If you have some new findings or any new research, you can communicate it as journal articles. And there are science magazines which are meant for to target a particular population or a particular audience, such as children sometimes, and sometimes you know, even the fellow scientific community. And besides, there are also newspaper articles, because if you want your work to be recognized and at a larger level, one can also publish in a newspaper, and that will have a mass appeal, instead of publishing in some journal which will be read by only few people who are working in that particular field. So there are a number of, as I mentioned, academic articles, and all of them have different constituents. So I'll be talking in brief about them, so that you get an idea that what differentiates them from each other, and if one has to write it in future, then what are the things that have to be kept in mind? For example, the first one is the research article. So if suppose you do a survey or you do certain experimentation and you want to publish it in the form of your research article, so how do you do it, and what are the things that one has to keep in mind? So for research articles, as I've taken one example here, uh, mostly the headings should be able to communicate what the authors have done in that particular paper. For example, it talks about the amelioration of diabetes induced cognitive impairment by these channel inhibitors, behavioral study and mechanistic study. So by reading the title, one comes to know that these people have worked on these channels or these particular targets, and they are doing some kind of behavioral study and something related to that. So title should be such that the people who are reading it, especially in terms of research articles, they should know that what lies within the article. And most of the times there are no specific word limits for such articles, although nowadays with the coming of new journals, people have put word limits on in certain journals where they want everything should be concise and short. But because people can work they want to justify a particular hypothesis or justify a particular statement, uh, such that they are able to bring out that discovery in a proper form. So that is how research articles are written. I'll be talking about the content of the research and review articles in detail later. First, let's see that get an overview of different type of academic articles. Then comes the review articles, which are the second most common type of academic articles which are there. What separates it from the research article is that in that people don't make any new discovery or they don't invent anything. What they do is they discuss the already known facts and findings or experiments and put their perspective, or they combine certain studies which have already been done previously and see if they can find out a new direction or a new point of view from those studies. Because often what we have is if you individual or segregated experiments, and someone has to be there who can combine what different authors have said or different labs are working on, and then they combine it to write a review article. And it can also provide a historical perspective on any area of research. For example, this example here which I have taken, these transient receptor phenomena. So in this also the title should be able to communicate what lies within, so that people after reading the title are interested in going further and reading the findings or the discussion which you have put in your article. And most of the times the trend is that the expert of a particular field writes a review article. So suppose if I have been working in a particular field for say 10 years, I have been working on and discuss my perspective related to that. And these also mostly don't have any word limit. There are certain mini reviews which are mostly of 3000 to 5000 words, and while on the other hand there are exhaustive reviews which can be pages and pages long. Then there are certain other academic articles which are known as perspectives and commentaries. So these are the ones which are usually short and written up to the point. And for example, for commentaries, these are mostly less than 500 words. So suppose if someone publishes an article and some other author who is an expert on the field just want to give comments on that particular article, so he might write a commentary on for that specific article. That's it. And that would be very short. Instead of as I mentioned, for review and research articles, they can be as long as one wants in most cases. And while commentaries, that is just of 500 words or maximum 700 words. On the other hand, perspectives are just like commentaries, usually a little longer, and they can discuss mostly more than one paper. So suppose if 2 or 3 papers have been published in a particular field and there are certain say conflicting findings, so an expert in the field can write a perspective. And So in certain ways, the perspectives in commentaries do overlap with each other, but mostly in terms of word limit and how many articles one can discuss, and they differ briefly. But keeping these aside, the two most common type of academic articles which you will find everywhere is either research article or a review article. And there are certain layouts which although vary across journals but remain more or less same, and one has to follow them whenever one is making a academic article. Pardon for the mistake, it should have been article in the heading. There, as I mentioned, there are a number of things which one needs to be careful about. Firstly, there is the title. So the title of the article should be such that it is able to discuss whatever is mentioned within the article. Then comes the title page. So title page, and I think you, if you would have read what we are going to teach you in this internship, then you must be having some idea about the academic article. So authors can sometimes or are sometimes required to mention their biographies on the title page. And besides biographies, they're also required to mention their email IDs, their addresses, and other things. Because what happens is that, so if suppose if I want to ask some question to the authors of a particular paper, how will I contact them? For that, they make a title page where everything is listed. If I can go back to, so you can see here that you'll see this mailbox. So if I click on that, and I can get the email ID of the author, and as well as his affiliation and others. So these things are always kept in mind so that if in future someone has a query, that can be answered in the proper manner. Then comes the structured abstract. So there are different kind of articles. Some are some are published in subscription based journals. That is, you have to pay to read the articles. You must have heard stories of your parents or maybe your grandparents, if someone worked in the field of academia a few years back, when there was no internet, one has to go to the library, and then using a particular pamphlet, they had to search which books were lying at one particular uh, um, almirah in the library, and then find a particular note or article from that. But now, as we have everything in the electronic form, so how subscription based journals or subscription based articles work is that institutes or government institutions or sometimes private institutions, they pay a subscription fees to the journals, and then they will give the subscription of their article, and then students can, using that subscription, they can read the whole article. But even if someone does not have a subscription, they can still read the abstract of the article. So abstract briefly summarizes all the findings, all the methods, all the discussions which the authors have done in their paper. So an abstract is one of the most important one of the most important parts of the academic article. Then comes the graphical abstract, which has recently come into the picture. So along with the abstract, what people have started giving is now the findings in the graphical form. So suppose I discover something that X increases Y or Y increases X. So, and then make a hypothesis out of it, do some experiments. All these findings I'll try to summarize in the graphical form, in the form of figures, because that is, as I mentioned in the beginning, that is more catchy, and that is more uh, easier to read to the viewers or readers. Then comes the keywords. So suppose if you have to search something, that Sachin Tendulkar hit the 100th ton, so you are going to put something on the Google, and then it is going to pop up, right? Similarly, for searching the articles as well, you have to put in certain keywords. Or if you want to search Sachin Tendulkar and Sharjah, so probably his famous Sharjah ton will pop up. So these are the kind of keywords that we need for searching academic articles as well. Suppose I need to search articles which are related to some maybe ion channel, and I want to know that if someone has worked on that before or not. So I'll try to put keywords related to those ion channels in Google or some other journal websites or certain other databases, and then I can get all the articles which cover those keywords. Then the text organization, which actually comprises of what an article is. I'll be talking about it in the next slide. And after the text organization comes the conclusions. So what all is the summary of your article, and sometimes people even write the future aspects of future perspectives, where how this article can be helpful for someone who is going to do some work in future. And then people also list other things such as abbreviations, if any, because if you are reading an article of a particular field for the very first time, you might not know what certain standard abbreviations are. So it is encouraged that you people write abbreviations as well in the beginning or in the end. And consent for publication, this is one has to comply with the journal's policies, and sometimes even give them access to your article permanently, well, and like that. And then conflict of interest. So suppose if I have my own company and I am working on a particular medicine, so I have to get certain studies done from a third party or from a place which is not owned by my company. And those people who carry out those experiments or those findings, they can they have, if they publish those findings individually and without my influence, then they don't have any conflict of interest there, because they don't have any financial interest, which suppose if I own a company I have, and that sometimes leads to malpractices, because if I have a company, I have a medicine, I'll try and prove that yes, it is going to be effective, why it might not be, or it might show some side effect which might be, you know, uh, and disastrous in future. So it is very important that there is no conflict of interest. Or suppose if I am the author and some person who is known to me is the editor, then I might have a personal conflict of interest there, because he knows me and he might be more aligned to publish my article even if it is not up to the standards. Then comes the acknowledgement. So one always needs to acknowledge the smallest of the contributions which have been made, because it is not possible to do anything in academia by just one person or few people. We take help from lots of people who sometimes don't make significant contributions to be the authors of the paper, but still their name should always be acknowledged in the acknowledgements, and it should be clearly stated that how they helped to bring out a particular study or review article or anything. Then references. So this also I'll be taking in a little bit more detail, because in academia it is very important that if you have used someone else's paper or someone else's findings, you always acknowledge them, and you also refer a particular statement or particular study in, if used in your paper, properly in the form of references. Then comes the figures and illustrations, which are very important, and these are things which appeal people to read your paper or read your study. In chemical structures, if it's related to chemistry, tables, and supportive or supplementary material, these are the other things that are important part of academic articles. So as I mentioned, the text organization is the core of any article, and it has various section headings such as introduction, where a person is going to tell that what all has been done in this particular field. If they have added a new finding in this study, then they can briefly summarize that as well, and how that is going to address the knowledge gap, that can also be mentioned. So it just provides an overview of the whole article, that why was this particular work necessary, or why was this paper important. Then comes the materials and methods, where people describe how a particular experiment was performed, because it's very important that if I do something in my lab, it is reproduced somewhere else in some other part of the globe. And for that, it is important that people mention the materials and methods which they have followed in a precise detail. Then the experimental observations. So if I have a new finding, if I have a new observation, that can be mentioned in the observation, experimental observations, and all the calculations, analysis, statistics, all this. If you are applying some statistics on already existing data, all that goes into the experimental observations. Then the results, these will discuss the comparisons across groups. So experimental observations and results go hand in hand. Like some journals you will find, in some places you will find that experimental observation and journals have been clubbed together, and people see that what different things have been done. And then it is very important that you discuss those results, because in results we're just going to mention that we see this, but what inference can we draw from those observations, that will be discussed in the discussion section. And in addition, it is always encouraged that you discuss your results in the light of previous studies which have also either done something similar to what you are doing or something related to what you are doing. And then the conclusion, which I already talked about earlier. Coming on to certain aspects which one always has to keep in mind while writing an academic article, one of the most important aspects is plagiarism. So your article should always be plagiarism free. If some of you might have participated in the monomousumi essay writing competitions, so we always encourage people to, you know, submit essays which are plagiarism free, because we don't want that whatever people are submitting, that is copy pasted from somewhere else. There are a number of paid and free software. So I'm hoping that all of you are familiar with what plagiarism is. Is it so?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's plagiarism just means copy paste. So if uh, someone copies and pastes someone else's content, then it would be plagiarized. So one has to be careful that they don't use anyone's content. If you are using, one can give the reference for the same, but it should not be direct copy paste. There are a number of software, as I mentioned here, such the standard one which is used by most journals is Turnitin, but it's a paid software. There are others such as Plagiarism Exchequer, or lots of them are there. Qtext, then small SET tools. There are lots of others which are free which are free. A link is also there on the Monomousumi website for the plagiarism check. You can use that as well. Then citations and bibliography. So whenever you are using someone else's work for forming a foundation for your study, or you are referring to what they have discussed, you should always mention it in the form of citations. So in the article, when along with the text, people, you must have seen these kind of statements such as Greco et al. 2001 in the text, or sometimes people use within the square brackets 1 2 3, or between the normal brackets 1 2 3. So those are the citations. And in the end of the article, you will find bibliography, which is written something like this. So this just so if one, sometimes these are linked as well. So using the hyperlink, if a person clicks on citations, they can go on to bibliography and see what was the name, author, page number, volume, edition. So this helps you to, if you want to search that particular article which authors have cited or authors have discussed, you can go to that article and see if actually those things have been done in that paper or not. And one can do it manually as well if the number of citations to be done are very less. And there one can use software such as EndNote and Mendeley, which are two of the most commonly used software in academia for doing citations. These are software are easy to use, they're user friendly, and uh, their use is often encouraged, because what happens is that if you are submitting your work or your academic article to one place, they will have a particular format for the bibliography. And then when you do it at some other place, suppose they don't like your work and they say that it is more suitable for some other place, then the other place will have their own format. They might have the authors say they might use the only the first name of the author and the no last name. So one has to change. If you use the software, then all those things become easy, because you can just do the settings, exclude the first name or exclude the last name, and then go ahead. In addition, there are a number of digital writing assistant tools available nowadays. As I mentioned about the EndNote, so EndNote can be added to the as an extension in the Word itself. So you can write in the Word and cite simultaneously. Similarly, there are others such as Grammarly, which is a digital writing assistant tool. One can use it for free, and using Grammarly, one can correct punctuations, spacing errors. It sometimes also gives you suggestions for replacement of a word by another, and like that. While there are others as well online, and as well as extensions, word extensions, which you can use. In the end, there are lots of other things which one needs to keep in mind while writing academic articles. Uh, the most common practice is that one should not use websites such as Wikipedia, where anyone can write what they want. And if one does that, then it does not leave a good impression on the journal or on the place where you are submitting your paper or your article. And then one should avoid controversial topics. Depending on the article, one should not be too narrow or too broad minded. And sometimes being technical is good, while sometimes, if depending on what audience you are addressing, sometimes being too technical becomes a problem. And statistics always helps. Suppose if I want to publish an article and I include certain statistics with it, so people get an idea, yeah, this study is relevant, and the work that some XYZ person has carried out has some significance, and it is more likely to boost your chances of publication at that particular place. So just to conclude, that content writing has a very broad horizon, and academic writing is just one of them. And you will be learning about lots of other things in this workshop and in this internship. um, Academic writing does involve a lot of research and sometimes review of literature. While for both of them, novelty is one of the main criteria. If your work is novel, if what you are presenting is novel, then there are high chances of acceptance. And one can use technology and software and can improve what they are writing. And yeah, and no one is perfect, and there's always scope of improvement for everything. Yeah, thank you.
Bhupesh, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're audible.
Namaskar.
Sandeep.
You have narrated like anything. Very nice.
Thank you so much.
Even now I can
Great.
write the academic article.
Yeah,
Whereas
sure.
I am not
With your
nowhere in
experience,
academics.
with your experience, it would be really great.
Thank you.
So I think there is one question from Urvi. Can we add websites and citations? Yeah, definitely. You can add websites. You can add articles written in newspapers. Anything. As long as it is authentic, you can add anything in the citations. Every journal has a particular format which you might be required to follow, but you can always write it. Yeah, I think Tanmay had already answered it. Yeah, Mobani, if she's here. If someone has any doubt, they can write either in the chat box, or they can unmute themselves and go ahead and ask the question. I guess we have less than a minute, so we can join again in case someone has some doubt.
Mobani has a not proper internet, I think.
Yeah, I think she has some issues with the internet. So if anyone has any question, they can ask. It would be